You're listening to On the Way Home with your host, Emmy Kelly.
Welcome back to On the Way Home, the podcast where we explore the people and ideas shaping housing solutions in communities across Canada. I'm your host, Emmy Kelly, and today I'm joined by Jessica DeVreeze, Affordable Housing Team Leader with the City of Airdrie. Jessica's career spans policy strategy, municipal leadership, and on-the-ground implementation, giving her a unique perspective on how housing moves from ideas and plans into real homes for real people. Her work sits at the intersection of policy, partnerships, and practical action, helping municipalities navigate the complexity of delivering affordable housing in rapidly growing communities. Let's listen in. Welcome, Jessica. Thank you so much for joining us on the way home today. So excited to have you.
Thank you so much, Emmy. I'm very honored to be on the podcast today. Thank you.
We're going to start with our signature question on the podcast. What does home mean to you?
Yeah, so in thinking about this, I think that home really comes down to stability, safety, and belonging. And so when you have these elements, you really have the foundation to participate fully in your life. And that means working and taking care of your kids and being a happy person. And from my own experience, just working across different cultures and contexts, home can really look different in different places, but everyone has that same need for dignity and security. And I think that is absolutely universal. And because without it, everything becomes harder. And with it, everything else is, the world is your oyster. Everything is possible. So.
That's true. It definitely does always feel like the foundation of, success, goal setting, everything. Your career has taken you from policy strategy in Calgary to leading affordable housing work in Airdrie. What sparked your personal interest in housing? What pulled you into the space? Maybe if you'll just share with our listeners a little bit about your personal journey.
Absolutely. So my earlier part of my career was in international aid, and my education, earlier part of my career was all in the international aid space. I was always very committed to public service, but that's how it manifested, is in the international arena. And so I worked with the Peace Corps and USAID and did a lot of community and economic development work. And when I returned to Canada, I realized that my background in international work didn't exactly transfer as seamlessly as I thought it would. But I still really wanted that connection to having a policy, kind of overlay and how it would help people's actual lives. And so I eventually found my way to the City of Calgary's team with the affordable housing team. And honestly, that's where my affordable housing journey began, was with the City of Calgary. And eventually I transitioned to the City of Airdrie. And I think that the municipal space is just the absolute perfect intersection of getting to see those real high level impacts of policy and how they impact on people's lives. And in this case, housing security and delivering homes for the people that need it the most. So it's been quite a journey through, international work to a very domestic application of my work. But honestly, I think that the municipal space is a very, very compelling space to be for affordable housing delivery.
I have to ask, which places in the world did you work?
Well, I did my Peace Corps service in Morocco. And then when I worked for USAID, I was stationed in Washington, D.C., but I was on the Iraq desk. So I did temporary duty assignments in Iraq and in Haiti. And in between those places, I traveled quite extensively, just on little temporary assignments elsewhere as well.
That's really cool.
Yeah, but my main focuses were in Iraq and Haiti.
Any interesting stories from Iraq or Haiti?
Oh my God.
One, tell us one.
There's many interesting stories. There really is a lot of interesting stories. Actually, it's interesting how those lessons from the working in international aid can really translate to the domestic space as well. It's pretty incredible. When you've had a kind of a breadth of different experiences, how they can translate into how can I do my job better in this role. So I have a few notes on that hopefully we'll get to later.
Very cool. Sounds like no story today.
Yeah.
What surprised you most about the shift from being a policy strategist, going to leading housing initiatives on the ground? What felt harder or more real once you were in implementation mode?
Yeah, so working for the City of Calgary, it's a very large and very sophisticated system. They have deep specialization, really strong governance, and very big picture strategy. And it really means that the scale of your work touches many, many people. And in a smaller municipality like Airdrie, there's a lot of different applications. It's a much faster pace, much leaner teams, and the decisions have the potential to turning into outcomes very quickly. And just like a little tiny story to kind of exemplify that, when I first started here at the City of Airdrie, one of my first assignments was to write a briefing to the housing minister. Okay, so here I go, typing away. And our international affair, or our intergovernmental affairs leader, I turned it in. I was like, okay, here's the draft, and she was like, okay, this looks great. I'll just send it now. And I was like, wait a minute, what? Like, it's not going to go through 25 different approvals? Like, what are you doing? She said, no, looks really good. Very authentic. Okay, goodbye. And so that just really exemplified and really captured really well Airdrie's context. There's a lot of clarity. There's a lot of trust and speed, and everybody's wearing multiple hats. So I think that implementation is very human and relationship driven in a context like this. And so instead of having just one piece of a project like you would in a much larger system, working for a smaller municipality gives the implementation touch points that navigate, a lot of different things like capacity limits. That's a major one. Sequencing and the challenges that come with that. Community questions and political pressures all come down to, I'd say most people's roles here in the municipality. So the feedback loop can be a lot quicker.
Interesting. And from what you're seeing across municipalities, what can we do better in affordable housing right now? And also, what are some examples of cities that are getting it right? Like, we do have good examples in Canada. What are those, and can you share?
Yeah, so I think that the municipalities who are recognizing their roles and really leaning into their municipal roles are the winners here. So with municipalities have a very strong, they have the potential to be in many different places, but they really, when they really lean into the regulatory environment, their funding tools, even if they're limited funding tools, and their potential and capacity to bring together partnerships through a collaboration role, I think those are really key. And so who's getting it right? Well, I mean, everybody is in a different space in their implementation journey as municipalities. And we've seen some real advancements here in Alberta, Edmonton and Calgary being, kind of key standouts in the amount of housing that they've delivered in a short amount of time. It's pretty incredible. And then smaller and mid-sized cities are in that very nimble space where they are, I think, in a position to really catch their stride. So the City of Airdrie, for example, is, they've prioritized housing over the past several years and come a very long way in a short amount of time because of those things that I mentioned before, like just the ability to be very nimble, to see that change from, okay, we're going to do this to an actual result. So, so I think that leaning into municipal roles is a really kind of key part of that. You're recognizing what your role is.
And municipalities don't build housing alone.
Mm-hmm.
Could you share how important things are like land use, policy tools, partnerships, and speed in actually moving affordable housing projects forward? And where also do we tend to bottleneck ourselves?
Yeah, so I think that all of those elements that you mentioned are very, very important. And they all kind of speak to the same outcome, which is alignment and predictability that turn strategies into actual homes. So housing, I kind of see it as it's like a choreography. So the land needs to be there, partners need to be there, policy, capital approvals, all of these elements need to work together in a very synchronized way in order to get to the result of opening homes that the community needs. So the municipality is only one of the partners that need to be fully at the table and committed to being at that table to achieve housing delivery. And I see the municipality's position as you could make it a lot easier or a lot harder to deliver the homes that are needed. So land use is like one of those key considerations that will enable housing. And whether that's delivered by the private market or nonprofit, non-market homes, the land use is a direct connection to how is this housing going to be feasible from a financial lens. And so there's a lot of key variables in that. For example, one of a main issue that we hear very, very regularly is parking and parking minimums. So if you have, if you require 5 parking stalls per unit, well, you're probably not going to get that condo or that purpose-built apartment building project activated, right? And the amount of time that it takes to go through an approvals process, whether it's a permitted use or a discretionary use, that's all comes back to certainty. And those developers that are trying to get homes built, they need certainty. They have a lot of capital put into these projects. So having that certainty of, this is a permitted use, it'll be, it'll go through the system in a predictable and efficient manner, or, actually, maybe not. Maybe there's going to be, some going back to the drawing board because the project doesn't fit into a community character or other kind of barriers to getting projects from concept to execution. So those land use tools, I think, are key. Goes along with policy tools. How can you prioritize the type of housing that is needed in a community instead of just first come, first serve, right? Like this is considering that every municipality has a different position in terms of the type of homes that are needed. I think kind of one common theme is we need lower cost homes just in general across the board. So allowing those homes that are able to be delivered at a lower cost and faster and prioritizing them higher will get the types of homes that the community needs faster. And in the context of a housing crisis, I think that's really important. So, I think that all of those things are very important. And then you mentioned partnerships. Partnerships are key. No one entity can deliver alone. As I mentioned before, the municipality is one partner amongst several that are needed to be at the table to deliver affordable housing. So showing up as a good partner and leaning into your role in the partnership that we talked about earlier are also kind of key elements. And then, of course, there's speed. Like you can have all of this, going along, tickety boo, great, right? But if it takes, in the environment that we are in right now, we see, a lot of different unpredictable variables coming down with the cost of construction and, and things change very rapidly. Priorities change rapidly. So getting through the process from concept to delivery in the quickest way possible is also a key element to success. So yeah, that's something that we really need to work on, especially in the non-market housing space. It takes a really long time. And so aligning all of those different things so that we can get homes open faster, I think is really important now in Canada.
I'll go back to the piece that you highlighted around partnerships, because you've done a lot of work in coalition building and partnerships across diverse groups. What does effective collaboration look like when you're trying to move something as complex and political as affordable housing?
Yeah. Well, I think it takes a lot of different variables to show up and be an effective collaborative model. So collaboration doesn't necessarily mean consensus. It means people sticking through the process and being willing to have difficult conversations together to come out to a shared solution. So deciding what that solution is and everybody being, committed to that in the first place is kind of one of the key components, I believe. Another part about a good collaboration is really recognizing the different partners' strengths and limitations, and then being able to synchronize. Okay, who can do this better? Who needs help? So I think that those are really key elements. And then just just showing up. Honestly, it's as simple as just showing up sometimes. Having that commitment to whatever the goal of the partnership is, and putting the dedication and resources into making it happen. And everybody's overtaxed for time, and everybody has 800 priorities that they're trying to advance. But I think partnerships really work really well when everybody has a commitment to making to getting to an outcome that everybody has agreed upon.
And what would you say are the biggest barriers to building affordable housing today from your desk, politically, financially, operationally? What are some of the practical ways cities can start breaking those barriers down?
Okay, so I don't want to be a big, huge downer when it comes to listing all the barriers to affordable housing. I mean, there are many. Everybody loves to talk about affordable housing, and nobody loves to finance it. But that being said, I think that there are meaningful solutions. So let's just start with the biggest one, the most obvious one to me, is those financing gaps. Especially financing for affordable housing at scale. So affordable housing requires capital to build and to operate the housing, and to be able to keep people stably housed in projects once they're open. And so I'd say that is a big barrier. A lot of the funding streams that we have are fragmented, they're competitive, and they're unpredictable. And that makes long-term planning really very difficult. Also, when you have very limited operating dollars across the sector, this is not just a municipal issue, and this is a sector-wide issue beyond just affordable housing for any kind of social application like mental health supports and whatnot. So when nonprofits and service providers and private partners, they're all navigating these operating funding limits. And you can't really build a stable and resilient housing system if the organizations responsible for delivering it are financially strained and constantly spending resources on fundraising every year. So that's kind of the biggest barrier, that financial component. and I'll get to the solutions that I see in just a second. The other big barrier in my mind is just really, it comes down to public misunderstanding for affordable housing. So residents are really being squeezed. Like their mortgages are going up because of interest rates, and their rents and insurance and utilities. Like everything is expensive, and getting an affordability writ large is getting harder, right? So it can be really difficult for people to understand how investing in affordable housing helps to stabilize the whole community and not just certain households. So, addressing that narrative is really important. So how do we break these barriers down? Well, okay, so let's start with the funding one. So municipalities like Airdrie are experiencing extremely rapid growth, and that exposes the need for major infrastructure investments like water and wastewater and transportation networks, fire halls, rec centers, everything. Like I guess I'm speaking from a kind of a Western perspective here. There's been very rapid growth in many cities across Alberta, Airdrie being one of them. So these infrastructure needs are very expensive, and they're generational needs. But because municipalities have limited revenue tools, much of these costs land on homeowners through their property taxes. And at the same time, municipalities are being asked to do more with less while still keeping taxes manageable. So in that environment, affordable housing can seem like something like, oh, but let's just fund that later. We can fund that later. We have to deal with these, key infrastructure issues right now. But the truth is, I think that affordable housing is civic infrastructure. And so just like any other piece of infrastructure, it's required to have consistent and predictable investment over time. And even if that line item is a small budget line item, the regular funding of it is really important to building a successful and complete community, to have a place for everyone to live, and have, let's say, to have appropriate housing options for the members of your community. So I think that that one of the solutions is, even if it's small, regular and predictable funding, and treating affordable housing the same difference as a wastewater line is the civic infrastructure of affordable housing. And also, so getting back to the kind of the public misunderstanding or public perception, I think celebrating incremental wins are really important to get our elected officials that represent the public really on board and invested. It's difficult in somebody's term to not see an actual ribbon cutting door to be opened. But there's many steps that happen before that ribbon cutting ceremony is scheduled. And we really need to celebrate those wins and recognize the political will of elected officials and of administration to getting to that point. And I think that that's a key part of understanding for the general public as well, is look, affordable housing benefits everyone. It will, if we have housing choice, then everyone in the community benefits, and it takes a lot of incremental wins in order to get there. So acquiring the land and updating zoning and securing funding and approving policies. And all of this is required to move a project from a concept to an actual activated, opened project. And these are all really meaningful achievements that help move the ball down the field before the touchdown actually happens. And it really matters. So no one should have to rely on a GoFundMe, campaign in order to have a stable and safe place to live. And it doesn't happen overnight. It takes consistency in all of these areas to make it happen. And so I think that is a key part of the solution, is to maintain that consistency, both in funding and in, public education, and articulating the wins and why housing matters to everyone. So yeah, I think that's a really important part of the puzzle. And the other thing is really having intentional strategies when it comes to land acquisition. Land is the linchpin that gets affordable housing actually opened, and municipalities are in a key position to identify and or acquire land where affordable housing would make sense. So I think that is a key to addressing those barriers, is to at least if you have land, then you have a start, right? You can at least instigate and attract the other external funding from provincial or federal sources or others in order to get a project started. Yeah, and then the other thing that I think is really important is streamlining funding across all orders of government. So a lot of times the municipality has a very limited ability to apply funds to affordable housing projects, but those small levels of funds that are applied can attract much and leverage much larger, more funds to actually get a project actually opened. So although our municipality's funding position is small, it's very, very important to to getting the next step done.
I'm going to go back to your international aid work to ask you, when you were working in those multicultural global contexts, are there any lessons from that work that you think apply to the affordable housing sector here in Canada?
Yeah, I love that question. I think it's a really, really good question. So one thing that I'll point to, and this is really kind of a lesson learned from from my time working with USAID, and that is the importance of having really strong champions. And those, so international aid is like the easiest target when kind of applying funds from public sector, right? From public funds. It's like, oh, wait a minute, let's, I know what we can cut, funds that are going outside of the country, right? And so it's really important to, again, same difference as with housing, to articulate why these programs internationally are important to everyone's success at home. So, for example, with USAID, we had a very strong champion within the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense recognized, like, look, if this country has more economic stability, if they have a strong agricultural sector, if they have a strong regulatory environment, then people will be given, meaningful opportunities to contribute to their, to their economic well-being at home and their economy at home, and that will benefit any kind of, defense or organization there, because people will be looking at their own economic potential instead of, trying to have other applications that might cause it to be a failed state, right? And so, so the Department of Defense became one of USAID's strongest champions. It's like, oh, if we can stabilize countries and people through economic development and growth, then then that is a benefit for a world stability, a global stability. And the same thing can be applied with housing. If you have a strong champion in the economic development sector, in the public safety sector, that recognizes, hey, when we have stable housing, everyone benefits. The public safety benefits. Our own small businesses benefit. We can have workers in our retail stores when they have a place to live locally. And so making those connections with strong champions, I think, is really important, and it's something that I learned, in the international context, that we've applied locally here. I think that's really, really important.
What's giving you hope in the affordable housing space right now, and what signs of progress are keeping you motivated to stay in this work?
Well, I think that right now, affordable housing has gotten a lot more attention than it has since I've been working in this space since 2017 anyway. It's that recognition that, okay, affordable housing is important to everyone. And by the way, we're going to back it up with some resources, not just talk about it. So I think that is really very motivating right now. We see the big announcement with Build Canada Homes, and Build Canada Homes just saying, like, look, you come to us with the solutions, and we want to get this funding out the door and open the types of homes that Canadians need across the country. So that's I think very motivating. And what's keeping me motivated is strike while the iron is hot. Like right now, people are willing to do the work. People are willing to have the conversations at the levels that will actually move projects forward. And so it's never been a better time to really put forward all of those ideas, gather the partners together, have those conversations. They're all willing to come to the table right now, because they see the opportunity and they see the potential for funding to get things off the ground, and they see how important it is for community members, and it's a housing crisis, right? Like we are doing something about it, and so that is very, very motivating. I think not only to me but to many people that. Affordable housing has kind of been bashed around for a long time. Like it's hard to keep on slogging through, like the social sector writ large. And I do see hope with the funding tools that are being applied and the importance that affordable housing has garnered in the highest levels of government.
When you look ahead 5 or 10 years, what's your hope for what affordable housing could look like in cities like Airdrie and Calgary, and what needs to happen now to move us closer to that vision?
Right. Yeah. Well, my hope is that we can have truly mixed income communities where there is housing diversity allowed and executed on in every neighborhood. So we don't just have, the same type of home across a neighborhood. We can have housing diversity that truly serves people at every stage of life. So, and the built form looks different, right? At different stages of life. Sometimes you need a huge, 5-bedroom home with all these kids, and other times you need a much more downsized place to live, that you don't have to go out and shovel the snow across the walk every day, right? And being able to have both of those types of homes, or many other kinds as well, in one neighborhood, so people don't have to move away from their community, I think will serve communities very, very well. And it's just taking that recognition. So I see a pathway there now, and that's what I would love to see in this, futuristic 10-year time frame.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jessica, for joining us today on the podcast. Before you go, are there any last thoughts you want to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, I would say that, keep at it, keep trying. Airdrie's housing story isn't a, mission accomplished yet. It's an ongoing effort. It's coordination, it's persistence, And having that persistence and identifying champions, I think, are absolute essential elements to success. And you can do it. You can absolutely do it. And all we have to do is to, come to the table and invite others there and make it a welcoming and collaborative space. Now's the time. So I guess that would be my kind of closing thing to say.
Amazing. And I do love the optimism. I think that's so important for all of us to keep as we do this work and as we continue to work to move that needle. So thank you so much, Jessica, for joining us today. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Emmy. Thank you so much.
Take care. Today's episode featured Jessica DeVreeze, affordable housing team leader whose experience highlights the critical role municipalities play in turning housing policy into real-world outcomes. Her insights underscore the importance of collaboration, practical tools, and local leadership in overcoming barriers and advancing affordable housing solutions. Thank you for listening to On the Way Home, a podcast brought to you by Blue Door. Stay tuned for more conversations with leaders working to build stronger housing systems across communities.
You're listening to On the Way Home with your host, Emmy Kelly.